Welcome to the Toastmasters experience. My name is Evelyn. Get inspired by today's Toastmasters insights. Enjoy the show. And welcome to an episode of the Toastmasters experience. Today in the studio, I have Jenny, who happens to be my mentor. So I'm very excited to have Jenny in the studio today. So welcome, Jenny.
Thanks, Evelyn.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. Now, we're going to start at the beginning. When did you first join Toastmasters?
I first joined Toastmasters in 1993 when I lived in Sydney, and I was a member for about 6 years. And then I changed jobs and life got in the way and I didn't renew my membership. And then I moved up to the Blue Mountains, and in 2007 I rejoined Toastmasters and I joined Blue Mountains Toastmasters, which meets in Katoomba, and I've been a member ever since.
What was the club that you joined, the very first club?
The first club was Motivated Menai.
Okay.
And then we moved to the Inner West and I was a member of Ride Toastmasters.
So joining the second time when you did in Blue Mountains, why did you decide to join? Was there because you liked it so much, or what was the reason?
There were several reasons, but mostly it was social. When we first moved up the mountains, I was living between Bathurst and here for my work, and then I left that job and I was just solely based in Katoomba, and I thought, well, now I've got the opportunity to go to Toastmasters and to meet local people.
Do you remember what your very first speech was about and how you felt afterward?
My very first speech was an icebreaker when I was a member of Motivated Menai, and I gave a speech about my life and why I was joining Toastmasters. And at the time, I wrote it out in full and I tried to memorise it but couldn't, so I ended up using my notes, I think, for part of it. I remember meeting my mentor at the time at his place and gave my speech to him, and he commented about, my smile was my best asset when I was giving the speech. And now I think back, I go, the speech was okay, but if the smile was the best asset, I'm thinking the speech can't have been that good.
Okay. How do you do speeches now? Do you write them out as well and then practice?
I have tried just writing bullet points and then speaking to the points, depending on how familiar I am with the subject matter. Sometimes I can do that, but most of the time I find to get clarity of what I want to say and also to make sure that I'm speaking within time, I find that it's better to write it out. If I don't write it out, invariably there's the danger that I'm going, if it's a 5 to 7 minute speech, then I'm going to go over by 3 or 4 minutes, which is quite significant.
Yes, yes.
If it was only 30 seconds, I wouldn't be so worried, but if I write it out, I can get rid of all the waffle.
When you're at a meeting and all the roles are assigned, what is your favorite role that you like Toastmaster, evaluator? Is there a position that you like the best?
I can't say that I have a favourite role because all of the roles have benefit, and I find that it's better if I can do various roles over time. If I was to do the same role all the time, then I would only be good at that and not be good at other things. I do like being the speaker.
Yeah.
I do like being the Toastmaster, which is like being an MC, and I found that really valuable role as a transferable skill to outside of Toastmasters.
Yeah. So transferable skills, how have you used your transferable skills in the outside world as far as your job, or how have you used them?
I think all of the roles in Toastmasters are very transferable. Being a Toastmaster, I've found valuable for being an MC at events. Even being Sergeant at Arms, I've found very valuable because that helps you to understand how to set up the room, making sure that all the finer points are sorted out so that the rest of the meeting goes well. I found when I've been at external events that sometimes the chairs aren't set out, or there's no water, or the lights might not be on, or there might be a blind that's down that should be up, or vice versa. And I'm more aware of all of those environment aspects that make an event go well.
As far as executive roles, because I think you've done every single executive role. How have those executive leadership roles been transferable in your professional life?
Being president was useful for me as a leadership role, but it's funny because I have been president of external organisations long before I became president of Toastmasters.
Okay.
And so I found that it was a transferable skill from the other roles that I'd had to bring to the club as a president.
Yes.
VPE, insofar as setting an agenda, making sure that you've got the speakers all in order. I've found that I've been PD, or professional development coordinator, for various organisations over the years, and I find that role gets assigned to me a lot. I think I'm probably just an organised person, and it comes across that way. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I can talk to people, see what it is they want to speak about, ask them about it, and be able to talk to them as a speaker, even if I'm not speaking myself. So the VPE role, I think, has trained me most for that, to be able to deal with other people who might be on a speaking agenda, and then making sure that it all runs to time.
Yeah. When people hear of Toastmasters, they don't realize there's so many different roles within the organization that can lead to other sorts of self-development, not just being a better speaker, because that's what surprised me as well about Toastmasters. I just wanted to be a better speaker, but I realized all these other roles contributed to other sorts of skills. Now, what have you learned from Toastmasters that has surprised you?
I think the main aspect that has surprised me is this leadership aspect.
Yeah.
I joined Toastmasters for social reasons,
Yes.
and I thought that, oh, well, I'll learn how to speak in public, which my parents, when I was younger, kept telling me, you should do, you should do, you should do. They never did it, but
Yeah.
they always saw it as something that I should do. And so that's why I eventually joined Toastmasters, because I had this voice in my head saying, you should do it, you should do it.
Yeah.
And but what I found, and I've observed this with other people as well, is when you develop speaking skills, people think that you can lead, and they want you to lead an organisation or do a role because you present yourself well. Yeah. But it doesn't always transfer across, because some people can't lead. And so Toastmasters, I think, teaches you that aspect, and it becomes a natural progression in the real world that when you speak, that you get to do leadership. And so having those two in parallel, I think, is really important and was the biggest surprise to me.
How do you stay motivated to continue improving your public speaking skills? Like, are you looking at other sources of self-development, like books that you read or podcasts that you listen to? Not only Toastmasters, is there something else? The
main resource that lands in my email inbox on a weekly basis or so is Patricia Fripp. She writes about sales and leadership and professional speaking, and it's different, and it supplements what I have in Toastmasters. Yeah. But by the same token, what she says, and she's a big proponent of Toastmasters as well, but what she says in her emails is very pertinent to what you learn in Toastmasters. So I find that what I've learnt from her over the years has been very valuable.
Competing is a big part of Toastmasters. Do you like to compete, and what sort of competition do you like to be a part of?
I have a love-hate relationship with competing. When I first joined Toastmasters, I was gung-ho, yes, I want to compete. And then I went through a phase where, no, I don't want to compete because it's very stressful. I find that when I compete, that it hones my skills to a different level than what it does at club level. When I first joined Toastmasters, I regularly competed in evaluation contests where you give feedback to a target speaker. And I did that for years. And it's only fairly recently I competed in a humorous speech contest. And by doing that, my speaking improved astronomically. And more recently still, I managed to get better at speaking in table topics.
Yeah.
And it's an impromptu speech. And by practicing to compete at the area level, and then I made it through to the division level, my table topics ability has just improved out of this world.
How do you actually practice for impromptu speaking? Because you obviously don't know what question you're going to be asked, but there obviously is a strategy to learn how to speak, off the cuff. What sort of advice would you give?
The best advice was advice that I received most recently from another club where I am a member, Enhance Toastmasters, and they encouraged me to have lots of stories at my fingertips. You gave me a list of questions to ponder before I came to this interview. This morning I went through the questions and just brought to the forefront of my mind some anecdotes. Some of the anecdotes I've spoken about today in this interview weren't in front of mine this morning, but they've come out this afternoon.
Yeah.
But I've found that just by concentrating and thinking about some stories, they all start to flow a little bit better.
You never know on the day when you compete how you're going to go and how it's, even if you think you haven't done well or you have done well, the result is
always a surprise.
Is always a surprise. Is always a surprise. So I think I've learned through the years is I just can't get upset because I know I was a bit of a sore loser, and you can admit to that. The first few years, and I don't think I competed for a few years because I was so angry the whole process. But
well, to be honest, I think most people go through that phase, and that's part of learning with competing.
So
and that was a reason that I stopped competing for a while, because I was getting so angry, and I went, this is crazy. Why am I getting angry over something that's not that important in life?
Exactly. But you're right. Now I'm just a gracious person to accept the participation certificate. I'm happy when I even get that.
Yeah.
So
mind you, at the last table topics contest, I had quite a few people coming up to me afterwards who said, "You were robbed. You should have won."
Yes.
That I found more upsetting. I was more accepting of the result when they called it, and I went, okay, the judges obviously saw something else, but it was the response of people who were my friends trying to support me, which actually made me more upset. And that's probably a lesson for people who are trying to support people. Maybe it's better to just say, you did a great job, rather than saying you should have won, because then it starts casting doubt that, oh, well, maybe I should have won, or maybe I should have done something differently.
That's so true. I'm glad you brought that up, because when you do get that feedback, you think, oh, God, maybe I was robbed. So, there you go. So is there a favorite speech topic that you like to talk about? Or, I don't know.
Not like you.
Not like
you.
me. Okay.
I don't have a particular speech topic that I like to speak about. But if I had to say a genre, I like quirky things.
Yeah. You do. I've enjoyed your speeches through the years. I think you've spoken about onions one speech. And,
did I? I can't. I remember that one.
Yes, that was interesting. Or how to chop onions or something. So I learned a lot.
So that your eyes don't stream.
Your eyes don't stream. So I mean, that's what I love about Toastmasters, is that even if you go in on the day and you don't have a speaking role, you learn so much from other people. You learn about their stories. You learn how to deliver a speech better or do a better evaluation just by observing others. And
not only that, I just like being exposed to different ideas and different perspectives and topics that I would never have thought about, that someone gives a speech and you go, wow, never thought of that at all.
Yeah. And I love all the different types of people at Toastmasters as well, because you probably wouldn't hang around with them like in your friendship group, But in Toastmasters, we're all part of this group of self-development and learning how to speak better. And so we learn so much about them and they learn so much about us. And I've actually found I've delivered speeches which I've never told my husband about. You know how we reveal
happens
those
a lot.
things? It does.
Although my husband comes to Toastmasters, I sometimes have to censor what I was going to say.
That's true. There are a lot of couples out there, Mr. and Mrs. Toastmasters. Now, so you are currently in 2 clubs, is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you enjoy being in 2 clubs?
The 2 clubs have got different flavours.
Yeah.
Blue Mountains Toastmasters is a larger club and has more members coming through who are entry level.
Yeah.
So they're coming along because they want to learn public speaking or they have to present at work or a wedding or some other reason. And so in some ways, seeing these naive speakers, you learn a lot from that because they haven't censored themselves yet.
That is so true. Yeah.
The other club that I am a member of, Enhanced Toastmasters, has more experienced members in it. And so I've learnt some valuable tips, such as what I explained to you about how to do table topics. Mm-hmm. And so I've learnt speaking tips from a more advanced perspective. Mm-hmm. So the 2 complement each other, and that's why I have had membership of the 2 clubs.
So what has Toastmasters and communication taught you in your private life?
It's taught me several things. Firstly, what we were speaking about earlier, the diversity of opinions of people. I think if I hadn't have been at Toastmasters, I wouldn't have been exposed to all of those different viewpoints and topics. And so I would be poorer for that. Yeah. So that's number 1. Number 2, it has taught me the practical skills of public speaking, which I've been able to use over my career as a university lecturer, speaking at conferences, organising events, and probably at a more personal level, giving evaluations in Toastmasters helps you to be critical of someone's performance without being critical of them. It doesn't always transfer across if you are trying to give feedback to someone in the real world because you try your best to give them the objective feedback, but often they will take it personally unless they have Toastmasters experience and know where you're coming from. But I've found, so for example, when I was doing academic work, I'd be asked to review articles which had been submitted to journals for publication. And so I would have to critically read what was submitted and then give feedback to the writer as to what was good and what could be done better. I know some of the reviews that I've got back from reviewers for my work that I've submitted. It's like, oh my God, this is terrible, you know. But I know to take it objectively, and even though they might be horrible in how they write it, I go, okay, there's a kernel of truth here. What is it?
Right.
So it's taught me that, but also to try and be kinder when I give feedback to other people.
Yeah.
I don't know that it always comes across, but I do try.
Yeah. No, you do. You do. Yeah. I mean, evaluation, I think, is one of the most difficult roles to do and to do well. And if you're the speaker getting the evaluation, sometimes it's hard not to take it personally, you know, so it's really hard. So those are skills at Toastmasters that I really do appreciate because I do have a bit of a short fuse.
Well, as I said, I think the trick is even if someone is really nasty in their feedback to you, it's their perspective.
Yeah.
And you need to find that kernel of truth.
Yeah.
And once you get to that, then you go, okay, get rid of all the other guff.
Yes.
I'll work on that piece that they were trying to convey in perhaps not a kind way.
What advice would you give someone who is considering joining Toastmasters?
The primary piece of advice is just do it. If you're scared, if you're worried, put all that aside, come along, see what it's like, give it a go. Yeah. My very first attempt at giving a public speech at Toastmasters was a table topic. At the first meeting, I think I stood up maybe for 10 seconds and maybe I spoke for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what I said because it is totally blanked from my mind. Mm-hmm. But I've got better over time, and it's like riding a bike, playing the piano, any skill that you're trying to acquire. Some people come along and they've already got some skills and you look at them and going, oh, they're a beginner and I'm a beginner too and they're so much better than me. But if you start comparing yourself to others, that's not very helpful. You just need to compare your own performance. And so when you give a speech in Toastmasters, you have a record of the evaluation, so you can actually see your progress over time.
Yep. Yeah. So true. Thank you so much. That's been absolutely great advice. And thank you so much for being on my very first official Toastmasters Experience podcast.
Thanks very much, Evelyn.
Thank you so much for your company. Please tune in next time to the Toastmasters Experience.